Been another case of kidnapping for ransom in the Eastern Cape. 58-year-old Neal was kidnapped against his will on Friday morning. He was outside his fish and chip shop in the Sitwell area when he was taken by a group of armed men. Now it's understood the people who took him are demanding his family pay them $1.2 million. That's over 20 million rand. It follows a spate of kidnappings like this. There was another reported kidnapping in Bronkhorstspruit today. You may remember the kidnapping of the four Mordi children in Polokwane 3 years ago. They were held for several weeks before being released. Lizette Lancaster is the project manager at the Crime and Justice Information Hub and Analysis at the Institute for Security Studies. Lizette, good afternoon to you and thank you for your time. Has there been a big increase in this kind of crime, kidnapping specifically for a ransom? And it seems in specific areas.
Yes, good afternoon, Stephen, and to your listeners, viewers. So we have seen about a 260% increase in kidnapping reported to the police in more than a decade. So if we just look at the cases for ransom, the kidnappings for ransom, it makes up less than 5% of the figure. But it still means that daily about 1 to 2 people are kidnapped for ransom. Of course, there are about 46 kidnappings in general per day on average in the country, mostly for short-term type of kidnapping where people are taken during hijackings or robberies. So we must not forget about those kidnappings, but of course the high-profile ones are these prolonged, organized kidnappings for ransom. And I know that from the police statistics in the 9 months of April to December last year, we saw 25 of these in the Eastern Cape. And of course, some of these are not reported to the police. Many are not because of fear of retaliation.
To do a kidnapping for ransom requires a gang. It requires organization. You have to have a place. You have to be able to take the person firstly. You then have to be able to hold them somewhere. You have to be able to communicate with the family. You have to have a way of receiving the money, I presume usually in cash. I mean, these are very organized gangs.
These are highly organized. I mean, what you are referring to is are people that are able to plan very effectively, that have the resources. And I think this is what is so, I almost want to say fascinating if it wasn't so alarming. They have the resources to kidnap this person, often the numbers. They also have the safe houses, as you are referring to, and they have the means to communicate fairly professionally with the family, and then the means to either ask for cash or through other traditional money transfers or even crypto transfers.
Are there particular communities or particular people who seem to be most vulnerable? I mean, so often we hear, and it's a sort of journalistic phrase, you know, a businessman or the children of a businessman. In some cases, it seemed almost that members of one religious group, Muslim community, it seemed were being targeted. I don't think that's the case in this case in Gqeberha. Do we know why certain people seem to be targeted? And I say seem to because, as you point out, we don't know about all of the cases.
We don't know about all of the cases. We do know that certain people are more vulnerable to being kidnapped. And it also is highly dependent on the type of gangs involved. So although these are highly organized gangs, many of them are local. So they might have found that kidnapping is more, yields more reward compared to the risk. So they might move away from, say, armed robberies. So it might be that. It might also be international groups or regional groups. So you have this mix of people targeting people that are often in business, fairly vulnerable in their shops. You won't see these necessarily as much in high security areas or, malls in Sandton, for example. You'll see it in sort of street-facing shops, often of people that trade in cash, because you have businesses that are highly cash-run. Then, of course, it becomes a little bit more shadowy. In some cases, you also have people operating other types of businesses and business disputes occur. So it's very difficult, especially because of the secrecy that surrounds these type of cases, to build a profile of who the victims are. But we do know that they are often cash type of business owners that are targeted in a place where they often don't have a lot of security.
There's supposed to be a national anti-kidnapping task force. Is that effective? Does it provide good help to police?
I think the police are doing an excellent job. We have seen quite a number of successes. The problem is that we are as I said, between April and December last year, when we're looking at just the quarterly crime statistics, we're looking at kidnappings for ransom, extortion, or human trafficking, and the extortion and human trafficking are very small numbers compared to the ransoms. But we're talking here nationally of over 500 cases that we know of, that are reported to the police. So that's an enormous number of cases. And that is put against over 12,000 other types of kidnapping. So we are talking huge numbers here that, as I've pointed out, are increasing exponentially. And often, these are gang-related cases. You might arrest the foot soldiers, but it's the kingpins. They move around. The ones that organize this are really hard to uncover and to apprehend, and to disrupt the network completely. So I think those are the challenges that the police face.
Lizette Lancaster, thank you, from the Institute for Security Studies. Really do appreciate the time. Well, Captain